My precious child, stop for a moment and let everything else grow quiet. The demands can wait. The unanswered messages can wait. The responsibilities that have been pulling at your attention can wait. You did not arrive at this moment by accident, and the stillness drawing you inward is not meaningless. I have brought you here with intention because there are things your heart has needed to hear, things that have been buried beneath the noise of your days and the weight of everything you have been carrying. You may have thought you simply paused because you were tired, curious, overwhelmed, or searching for something you could not quite name. But I have been drawing you toward this moment with a tenderness you could not see. Long before you recognized your need for stillness, I knew you would need it. Long before you began wondering whether anyone truly understood what was happening inside you, I already knew every hidden part of your story. I know the road that brought you here. I know every turn you expected and every turn you never saw coming. I know the days that seemed ordinary and the nights that felt endless. I know the moments when you wondered how your life had become so different from what you once imagined. I know how many times you kept moving simply because stopping felt impossible. Through all of it, I was there. You may not have recognized my presence in every season, but your inability to see me never meant that I had stepped away. I was with you in the uncertainty, in the confusion, and in the moments when you were doing your best with very little strength left. I saw what no one else noticed. I saw the exhaustion beneath your smile. I saw how often you answered, "I'm fine," because explaining the truth felt too difficult. I saw the way you learned to keep functioning while something inside you was quietly asking for rest. You became skilled at appearing strong. You learned how to walk into a room carrying burdens no one could see and still offer kindness, attention, patience, and encouragement to the people around you. You learned how to meet expectations even when your heart was exhausted. You learned how to keep moving when part of you desperately wanted someone to notice that you were struggling. And because you became so good at carrying yourself that way, people sometimes assumed you needed less care than you actually did. They saw your strength but did not always see its cost. They saw your reliability but not the pressure behind it. They saw you showing up, handling responsibilities, solving problems, and making things work. But they did not always see how tired you became after everyone else had gone home. I saw it. I saw every moment when you wished someone would look beyond what you were accomplishing and ask what was happening inside your heart. I saw every time you wanted to speak but chose to remain silent because you did not want to become another burden to someone else. I saw the questions you carried into the quiet hours when there was no audience and no reason to pretend. I heard the thoughts you were afraid to say aloud. I knew the grief you pushed aside because life gave you no convenient place to process it. I knew the disappointments you folded away inside yourself because another responsibility was already waiting. I knew the loneliness that could exist even when other people surrounded you. I knew the strange exhaustion that sleep did not always remove because your body was resting while your mind continued carrying everything the day had placed upon it. None of this has been hidden from me. You have never needed to perform strength in my presence. You have never needed to arrange yourself into a more acceptable version before coming near me. You do not have to clean up your emotions, organize your questions, or hide the parts of yourself that still feel uncertain. I am not speaking today to the version of you that knows how to appear composed. I am speaking to you as you truly are. I am speaking to the part of you that still has questions. I am speaking to the part of you that feels tired, tender, hopeful, cautious, wounded, grateful, confused, and unfinished all at once. That is the person I know. That is the person I welcome. That is the person I love. You have spent too much time believing that love must be earned by becoming easier to understand, easier to manage, stronger, more productive, more certain, or less needy. But my love for you has never depended on your ability to become impressive. I do not measure you by how much you accomplish in a day. I do not determine your worth by how few problems you create for the people around you. I do not value you according to how successfully you hide your pain. I know everything that remains unresolved within you, and I have not turned away. I know every scar, every unfinished place, every contradiction, and every fear you are still learning how to face, and none of it has caused me to love you less. You are seen here without being judged by the standards that exhausted you. You are known here without having to explain every detail. You are wanted here without having to prove that you deserve the invitation. For so long, you have carried more than you were meant to carry alone. You did not always choose that pattern. Sometimes life trained you into it. Circumstances taught you to become self-reliant because you could not always depend on someone else to step in. Experience taught you to anticipate problems before they appeared. Disappointment taught you to prepare yourself for the possibility that support might not come. So you learned to keep everything moving. You held responsibilities in one hand and other people's expectations in the other, and you kept telling yourself that you could handle one more thing. But I did not create you for endless self-sufficiency. Strength was never meant to become isolation. Endurance was never meant to mean that you must carry every burden without help. You can set your hands down here. You can stop holding everything together for a moment. The world will continue turning. The people you love will remain in my sight. The responsibilities waiting for you will still be there when this moment is over. You are allowed to become still in my presence without apologizing for what remains undone. This quiet is not empty space. It is a sanctuary. I have drawn you away from the noise long enough for you to remember that your life is more than the demands surrounding it. Beneath every role you perform, every responsibility you fulfill, and every expectation you meet, there is still a soul that needs to be known and loved. I know that soul completely. I know your name beyond every title the world has given you. I know who you are beneath every success and every struggle. And before you move any further, I want this truth to settle deeply within you. You are not invisible. You are not overlooked. You do not have to shout to gain my attention or become stronger to deserve my presence. You are already seen. You are already known. You are already welcomed. Stay here for this moment and allow yourself to receive that truth without arguing against it. You do not have to become someone else before I come close. I am here with you now, exactly where you are, loving the person you are today, not merely the person you hope to become tomorrow. Now I want you to understand what was really happening during the seasons when heaven seemed silent and your prayers appeared to go unanswered. You have looked back on certain moments and interpreted them through the pain you felt at the time. You saw doors close and assumed you were being rejected. You watched opportunities disappear and wondered whether you had somehow missed your chance. You saw relationships end, plans collapse, and circumstances refuse to change. And somewhere along the way, a dangerous thought began to settle into your heart. Perhaps I had forgotten you. Perhaps I was helping others while passing you by. Perhaps your prayers mattered less. Your hopes were too small. Your needs were too complicated. Or your life had somehow fallen outside the reach of my attention. I need you to hear me clearly today. You were never forgotten. Not for a moment. The silence was real, but the conclusion you drew from it was not. The delays were real, but they were never evidence that I had abandoned you. The closed doors were real, but they were not proof that your future had been taken away. What you could see was only the surface of a much larger work taking place beyond your understanding. There were paths you wanted because they looked right from where you were standing, but I could see where they would eventually lead. I could see what they would require from you, what they would awaken in you, what they would slowly take from you, and what they would leave behind. Some doors had to close because what waited behind them looked promising at first, but would eventually have cost you more than it could ever have given. Some opportunities passed because you were not being denied. You were being protected from carrying something before you had the strength, wisdom, stability, or support necessary to sustain it. Some relationships ended because the road ahead could not be built upon what those relationships had become. You saw only the immediate pain of losing what you wanted. I saw the entire road. You experienced the closing. I understood the protection. You felt the disappointment. I knew the direction. That does not mean the pain was imaginary or unimportant. I know how deeply some of those moments wounded you. I know how long you stood before certain closed doors asking why. I know how often you replayed conversations, decisions, missed opportunities, and unanswered questions, wondering whether you should have done something differently. But there are things you blamed yourself for that were never yours to control. There are outcomes you tried to explain that were being redirected by my hand in ways you could not yet recognize. You thought you were losing ground when I was keeping you from walking farther down a road that would eventually require you to turn back. You thought you were falling behind when I was positioning you differently. You thought nothing was happening because nothing visible was changing. But visible change has never been the only evidence of my work. Much of what I do begins where human eyes cannot see it. Before a new season becomes visible, conditions often have to be arranged. People have to be positioned. Character has to mature. Circumstances have to shift. Certain attachments have to loosen. Certain understandings have to deepen. Foundations have to become strong enough to carry what will eventually be placed upon them. This is why some of your prayers seem to remain unanswered for far longer than you expected. You prayed sincerely. You asked repeatedly. You came before me with hope. And when nothing changed, you returned again. Eventually, the silence began to hurt more than the circumstance itself. It is one thing to face something difficult. It is another thing to believe that the one who could change it is listening and yet see no visible response. That kind of waiting can shake the heart. It can make you question not only the outcome but also your relationship with me. You began wondering whether your prayers were reaching heaven at all. You wondered whether you were asking incorrectly, believing insufficiently, or somehow failing in a way that made you undeserving of an answer. But every prayer reached me, every word spoken clearly, every sentence whispered through tears, every prayer you could barely finish, every thought you could not put into language. I received them all. You have never prayed into emptiness. You have never cried out into absence. My silence was never indifference. I was not listening reluctantly, deciding whether your need was important enough for my attention. I was present throughout the entire process. The answer was not being ignored. The conditions surrounding the answer were being prepared. There are blessings that would become burdens if they arrived before the heart was ready to carry them. There are opportunities that could become sources of fear if they came before confidence had been built. There are responsibilities that would crush someone who had not yet developed the foundation needed to sustain them. There are relationships that cannot flourish if old wounds are still controlling how love is received. There are answers that need more than desire. They need a life strong enough to hold them. You were asking me to bring something into your life while I was working in places you had not thought to ask about. You were looking at the visible request. I was strengthening the structure beneath it. You were watching the calendar. I was watching the foundation. You measured progress by what had arrived. I measured progress by what was becoming stable within and around you. This is why the waiting could feel so confusing. Preparation rarely looks like fulfillment while it is happening. Sometimes it looks like repetition. Sometimes it looks like another ordinary day with no announcement that anything has changed. Sometimes it looks like doing the same faithful things while wondering whether they are making any difference. But hidden work is still work. Invisible movement is still movement. Silence does not mean inactivity. While you were asking where I was already moving through details you could not see. I was aligning what needed to align, preventing what needed to be prevented, and preserving possibilities you thought had already disappeared. I was working beyond the range of your vision so that what eventually reached you would not arrive without the structure needed to remain. I know you wanted some answers sooner. I know there were nights when one clear sign would have felt like enough to help you continue. I know you became tired of hearing yourself say, "Maybe soon." I know hope itself sometimes became exhausting because every new expectation carried the possibility of another disappointment. But the length of your waiting never measured the size of my love for you. A delay is not a declaration that you are unworthy. Another person receiving something before you does not mean they are more loved. Their timing is not the standard by which your story should be judged. I am not writing identical stories for identical people. I know what your life can hold, what your heart needs, what your future requires, and what must be prepared before certain things become visible. So do not use someone else's season as evidence against your own. Do not turn their answer into an accusation against my faithfulness to you. Your story has been moving even when it appeared still. Your prayers have been heard even when you could not trace the response. The doors that closed did not erase your future. The delays did not cancel what I was doing. What you called rejection was sometimes protection. What you called being overlooked was sometimes careful positioning. What you called silence was often the hidden room where preparation was taking place. You may not yet understand every reason for every delay, and I am not asking you to pretend that waiting was easy. I am asking you to release the belief that the waiting meant you were forgotten. It did not. I was present through every unanswered morning and every questioning night. I was working when your circumstances gave you no evidence to hold on to, and even now, though you may still be unable to see the complete picture, you can begin to look back differently. The silence was never the end of the story. It was part of the preparation for what your life would one day be ready to receive. Now I want to speak to you about the season that felt like fire, the season when so much of what you depended on seemed to shake, weaken, or disappear all at once. There were moments when you looked around at what was happening and could not understand why I allowed it. You knew I had the power to stop certain things, prevent certain losses, and protect certain structures you had spent years building. And because I did not stop them, you wondered whether the hardship was punishment. You searched your past for explanations. You replayed your failures, your mistakes, and the moments when your faith felt weak, wondering whether the pain was somehow repayment for everything you had done wrong. I need you to release that interpretation. The fire was not retaliation. I was not standing over your life, waiting for an opportunity to make you suffer. What I allowed was not intended to destroy you. It was a refining process, and understanding that difference changes the way you look at everything you survived. A refiner does not place worthless material into the furnace. He places something precious there because he knows what it contains and understands what the heat can reveal. Gold can carry substances that resemble it when everything is cool and comfortable. The impurities remain attached, hidden within what appears valuable until the temperature rises. Only then can what does not belong be separated from what is genuine. That is what happened in you. When life became difficult, things that once appeared dependable were exposed for what they truly were. Some sources of security that felt strong could not hold your weight when pressure came. Some opinions you had depended on for reassurance disappeared when you needed them most. Some identities you had built around achievement, usefulness, productivity, being needed, or being approved by others began to collapse. You discovered how exhausting it was to measure your worth by how well you performed. You began to see how much energy you had spent trying to remain acceptable to people who could never give you the security you were seeking from them. You saw that certain things you had called stability were actually dependence, and certain things you had called strength were habits of survival that kept you constantly afraid of losing control. The fire exposed all of it, not because I wanted to shame you for having relied on those things, but because I loved you too deeply to let them remain hidden forever. They could not accompany you indefinitely. They could not support the weight of the person you were becoming. What is false may feel safe when life is easy, but pressure reveals whether something is strong enough to endure. I know the revealing hurt. I know some discoveries came through losses you never would have chosen. I know there were days when it felt as though too much was being taken at once. You asked how much more could fall away before there was nothing left. Yet even in the hottest part of that season, I was not absent from the furnace. A refiner does not abandon precious metal after placing it into the fire. He remains close. He watches carefully. He knows the temperature, the timing, and the condition of what is being refined. He does not become distracted and forget what he is holding. He does not leave the process to chance. I was closer to you in that season than you understood. Every moment that felt unbearable was known to me. Every point when you thought you had reached your limit was seen. I knew how much pressure you were carrying, and I knew what was happening beneath what you could feel. The heat was separating you from what could not remain, but it was also revealing what could not be destroyed. Your faith may have become simpler, but it became more honest. You may have lost confidence in things you once trusted, but you discovered a deeper capacity to continue without them. Your love survived disappointment. Your compassion remained even after you had been wounded. Your ability to reach for me did not disappear, even when you had more questions than answers. Some days, faith did not look like confidence. It looked like refusing to let go completely. It looked like making it through one more night. It looked like whispering a prayer when you had no strength for a long one. It looked like waking up and moving forward when part of you wanted to stay hidden from the world. Do not dismiss those moments because they did not feel dramatic. They mattered. There were times when you were much closer to giving up than anyone around you knew. The distance between what you had hoped for and what you were living through felt enormous. Your hands were tired. Your heart was uncertain. The ground beneath you did not feel stable. And still, somehow, you held on. Even trembling faith is faith. Even faith mixed with tears is faith. Even faith that has questions can still reach toward me. What remained after everything was shaken is something you now know is real because it survived conditions that could not be faked. I also know that understanding the purpose of the fire does not erase the grief left behind. There are ashes you still look at with sadness. There are things you lost that mattered deeply to you. There are memories you cannot simply rename as blessings because they still hurt. I am not asking you to pretend that loss was painless. I am not asking you to hurry through grief in order to prove that you trust me. Healing does not require you to deny what happened. You can acknowledge that something wounded you while also believing that the wound will not have the final word. You can mourn what was lost without believing your life ended with the loss. You can carry honest sorrow and still allow hope to slowly return. I do not waste the places that hurt you most. The very areas of your story that once made you feel weak can become places from which compassion flows with unusual depth. You will recognize pain in others that someone who has never walked through it might overlook. You will know how to sit beside a hurting person without forcing them to recover before they are ready. You will understand that sometimes presence speaks more powerfully than explanations. The comfort you received in your darkest moments can become comfort you one day extend to someone else. This does not mean your suffering existed merely so you could help other people. It means suffering will not be allowed to remain meaningless. What wounded you does not get to own the rest of your story. What tried to reduce your life to loss can become part of a testimony that says, loss was not the end. You came through. I want you to recognize the significance of that rather than rushing beyond it. You came through days you once thought would break you. You survived nights when you did not know how the next morning would feel. You carried questions that remained unresolved and continued anyway. The fire changed you, but it did not erase you. It removed things that could not sustain you and revealed things within you that pressure could not destroy. You are not standing here because the season was easy. You are standing here because something genuine remained when everything else was tested. Honor that. Do not look only at what the fire consumed. Look also at what survived. Look at the faith that is still breathing, the love that is still present, the courage that still rises when it is needed, and the ability to trust that remains even after being stretched beyond what you thought you could bear. What emerged from that season is not untouched, but it is real. It has been tested. It has depth. And although you may not yet understand everything that will come from what you endured, you can know this with certainty. The fire was not your destruction. It was a refining season, and what remains in you now carries a strength, clarity, and authenticity that could only have been revealed under pressure. My precious child, now I want to speak to something you have carried for a long time without fully understanding it. The depth with which you feel. You have often treated your sensitivity as though it were a weakness that needed to be corrected. You have wondered why certain conversations stay with you long after they end. Why the atmosphere of a room can affect you so quickly. Why another person's sadness can settle heavily on your heart even when they say almost nothing. And why you sometimes leave ordinary interactions feeling emotionally exhausted without knowing exactly why. There were times when you wished you could become harder, less affected, less aware of what others were carrying. You tried to protect yourself by building emotional walls, telling yourself that strength meant feeling less. And whenever those walls failed, whenever someone's pain still reached you, you interpreted it as evidence that you were not resilient enough. But I want you to see this part of yourself differently. Your sensitivity was not an accident. I placed within you an unusual capacity to notice what often goes unnoticed. You hear what is being communicated beneath the words. You recognize when a smile is covering sadness. You sense when someone is speaking confidently while fear is hiding underneath. You notice changes in tone, expression, silence, distance, and atmosphere that others may overlook. This awareness is not something you need to despise. It is part of the way I formed you to love, to understand, and to respond with compassion. But a gift that is not understood can become exhausting, and that is what has happened to you many times. You learned to feel deeply, but you were not always taught how to release what you felt. Instead of allowing another person's pain to pass through your compassion and into my hands, you often allowed it to remain inside you. You carried conversations home. You replayed someone's sadness hours later. You worried about situations you could not change. You absorbed tension that did not belong to you and then wondered why your own peace disappeared. Little by little, The emotional burdens of other people accumulated alongside your own. Eventually, you could no longer tell which fears belonged to you and which ones you had picked up from someone else. You became like a sponge placed into every emotional environment, absorbing whatever surrounded you until there was almost no room left for your own thoughts, feelings, and rest. I want to teach you a different way to carry this gift. There is a difference between feeling and absorbing. Feeling allows you to remain compassionate without becoming consumed. Absorbing takes another person's burden and treats it as your responsibility. Feeling says, "I see your pain, and I will stand beside you." Absorbing says, "Your pain must now become my pain, and I must somehow solve it." Feeling allows love to move through you. Absorbing causes suffering to remain trapped within you. I created you for the first, not the second. You were never asked to become the final resting place for everyone else's fear, grief, anxiety, disappointment, or confusion. Those burdens belong in my hands. Your shoulders were not designed to carry the full emotional weight of every person you encounter. Mineare. What overwhelms you does not overwhelm me. What you cannot solve does not confuse me. What you cannot repair is not beyond my reach. Your responsibility is to love faithfully. Listen when you are called to listen. Speak when wisdom gives you something to say. Offer kindness where kindness is needed, and then release the outcome to me. Let compassion move through you like a river, instead of collecting inside you like stagnant water. A river remains alive because it keeps flowing. In the same way, you can care deeply without holding everything permanently. This will require discernment. Not every burden you notice is a burden I am asking you to carry. Not every problem you understand is a problem you are responsible for fixing. Not every person who needs help is someone you are called to rescue. You can recognize another person's struggle without making yourself responsible for the direction of their entire life. You can love someone and still allow them to make their own decisions. You can care about an outcome while admitting that you do not control it. You can say no without becoming cruel. You can step back without becoming indifferent. You can protect your peace without closing your heart. Boundaries are not evidence that your love has grown cold. Healthy boundaries allow love to remain clean, generous, and sustainable. Without them, compassion slowly turns into exhaustion, and exhaustion eventually creates resentment. I do not want your gift to destroy your peace. I want wisdom to protect what compassion makes possible. Some people may not understand this change in you. Those who became accustomed to unlimited access to your time, attention, emotional energy, or resources may interpret boundaries as rejection. They may say you have changed, and in one sense, they will be right. You are learning that loving someone does not require abandoning yourself. You are learning that constantly making yourself smaller so another person can remain comfortable is not the same thing as humility. You are learning that peace does not need to be sacrificed in order to prove loyalty. You are learning that generosity without wisdom can become self-neglect. These lessons may feel uncomfortable at first, because old patterns have taught you that being needed is one of the safest ways to feel valuable. But you do not need to exhaust yourself to prove that you have a loving heart. Your value is not measured by how much of yourself you can give away before there is nothing left. This understanding is also important when you think about the people who left your life. Some departures wounded you deeply because you had invested so much. You gave patience, forgiveness, encouragement, attention, second chances, and pieces of yourself you could not easily replace. When those relationships ended, you did not experience only the pain of separation. You began questioning yourself. You asked what you had done wrong, what you should have noticed earlier, whether you had loved badly, whether you had been too much or not enough, and whether becoming different might have convinced them to stay. But not every departure is proof of personal failure. Some relationships end because two paths can no longer continue in the same direction. Some people were able to walk with you during one part of your journey but were never meant to accompany every part of it. Some connections depended upon an older version of you who remained quiet, overgave, tolerated imbalance, or reduced yourself to preserve harmony. As you grow healthier, relationships built upon your self-abandonment cannot remain unchanged. That does not necessarily make the people involved evil, and it does not mean every memory must become bitter. It simply means that not every connection is designed to continue indefinitely. You do not need to turn every ending into an accusation against yourself. Sometimes space must be created before healthier connection can enter. The relationships that belong in the life you are becoming will not require you to disappear in order to maintain them. They will make room for honesty. They will respect the boundaries that protect your peace. They will allow giving and receiving to move in both directions. They will not demand that you remain permanently wounded, small, silent, or exhausted so that someone else never has to change. Learn from what ended without allowing it to harden you. Keep your heart open, but let wisdom stand at the door. Feel deeply, but do not absorb everything. Love generously, but do not confuse love with endless self-sacrifice. Release people when their journeys move in another direction, and do not chase every relationship that has completed its season. I gave you a tender heart because tenderness can reach places force never will. I gave you perception because there are hidden wounds that only careful attention notices. But I am also giving you the wisdom to carry these gifts without being crushed by them. You do not need to become less sensitive. You need to become more discerning. You do not need to stop caring. You need to learn where your responsibility ends and mine begins. When you understand that difference, the very part of yourself you once considered a weakness will become one of the clearest ways my love can move through you without stealing the peace I also desire for you. My precious child, now I want you to understand what has been happening beneath the surface during the seasons that looked empty to you. You have often measured progress by what you could see, and because there were long stretches when nothing appeared to change, you began to believe that nothing was happening. You looked at the same circumstances, the same unanswered questions, the same unmet needs, and the same hopes that seemed buried beneath ordinary days, and you wondered whether all your effort had disappeared into ground that would never produce anything. You prayed, waited, remained faithful, tried again, and kept moving forward. Yet the field in front of you still looked bare. But what appeared lifeless from above was not lifeless underneath. A seed placed into the ground disappears from sight before it ever becomes visible as growth. Once it is covered, there is a period when the farmer sees nothing, yet beneath the surface, something essential has already begun. The seed breaks open, roots begin forming. Life starts reaching downward before it ever rises upward. What looks like inactivity from the surface is preparation taking place where the eye cannot follow. That is what has been happening in you. During the years when you thought you were standing still, roots were growing deeper. Your patience was being strengthened through circumstances that refused to move according to your preferred timing. Your perseverance was being formed through days when you had little visible reason to continue. Your ability to trust was being stretched in places where certainty was unavailable. Your character was developing quietly through choices that seemed insignificant at the time. Every time you kept praying without immediate evidence, something was taking root. Every time you remained kind when bitterness would have been easier, something was taking root. Every time you chose honesty when compromise might have produced faster results, something was taking root. Every time you kept serving, showing up, giving, believing, or taking another faithful step when no one seemed to notice, the hidden structure beneath your life was becoming stronger. A harvest does not begin when fruit appears. It begins much earlier, in darkness, in silence, in the invisible work that makes visible fruit possible. You have been living through that hidden stage, and I do not want you to despise it simply because it did not give you immediate proof. The roots were necessary. Without them, what grew quickly would have fallen quickly. Without depth, increase would have become instability. Without the strength developed in secret, visible opportunity could have overwhelmed you rather than blessed you. But now the season is changing. What has been forming beneath the surface is beginning to press upward. The field that looked empty is not empty. The prayers you continued praying, the faith you practiced in ordinary moments, the patience you thought was producing nothing, and the endurance you developed when no one was applauding are not disappearing into the past. They are connected to what is beginning to emerge. This is why I am telling you not to retreat now. There is a particular temptation that comes when a person has waited for a long time. After enough disappointment, the heart learns to protect itself by expecting less. You begin to believe that lowering your expectations will reduce the pain if nothing changes. You tell yourself not to become excited, not to hope too deeply, not to believe too confidently, Because disappointment has taught you that hope can hurt. That reaction may feel like wisdom, but often it is simply an old wound trying to prevent another wound. You have learned to brace yourself before good things can reach you. You pull back emotionally before you know the outcome. You prepare for the door to close before you have even touched it. You assume the answer will be no because no feels safer when you expected it in advance. But I do not want yesterday's disappointment to decide how you respond to today's opportunity. There comes a moment when faith must move from endurance into movement. You have already survived the hidden season. You have already developed the roots. Now you must be willing to step toward what is opening instead of remaining where waiting became familiar. I am not asking you to manufacture confidence you do not feel. I am asking you to use whatever courage you still have. It may not feel like the courage you once carried. It may be quieter now, more cautious, more aware of how much disappointment can cost. That is all right. Courage does not require the absence of trembling. If the next step is small, take it small. If your hands shake, move with shaking hands. If you still have questions, move without pretending those questions do not exist. Faith is not proved by emotional certainty. Sometimes faith is simply movement in the direction of what you believe I am asking you to do. Bring the movement you can offer, and trust me with what you cannot control. Do not stand permanently at the threshold, analyzing every possible outcome until fear becomes your decision maker. There are doors that cannot be experienced from a distance. There are opportunities that require a response. There are conversations that must be entered, applications that must be made, ideas that must be acted upon, and steps that will remain theoretical until you actually take them. The long season of preparation was not meant to train you to remain motionless forever. It was preparing you to recognize the moment when movement became necessary. I have seen your faithfulness in the dramatic moments, but I have also seen it in the ordinary ones. I saw the mornings when nothing extraordinary happened, and you chose to keep believing anyway. I saw you return to responsibilities when you were tired. I saw you extend kindness without receiving kindness in return. I saw the prayers you repeated after wondering whether they were making any difference. I saw the work you did when no one praised it. I saw the times you stayed committed when walking away would have been easier. Those moments mattered. Your life was not being measured only by the visible milestones you wished you had reached. Quiet faithfulness carries weight. Small obedience carries weight. Consistency in unseen places carries weight. Do not dismiss the ordinary years simply because they lacked applause. Much of what is now becoming possible was built during those years. I also know there are practical needs that have been weighing heavily on your mind. There are gaps you have looked at and wondered how they could possibly be filled. There are circumstances where your available resources seem too small compared with what is required. You have studied the numbers, the limitations, the timing, and the possibilities, and at times, the distance between where you are and what you need has appeared impossible. But what appears impossible from your current position is not beyond my reach. You do not need to know every direction provision can come from before provision arrives. You do not need to predict the exact door before it opens. Your responsibility is not to control every mechanism through which the answer might come. Remain attentive, responsible, and willing to move when opportunity appears, but do not reduce my ability to the possibilities you can currently imagine. Help can arrive through a direction you did not expect. An opportunity can appear through a connection you did not plan. A solution can take a form different from the one you repeatedly pictured. The fact that you cannot see the route does not mean no route exists. So, remain steady. Do not dig up the seed because you are impatient to check whether it is growing. Do not abandon the field because the surface remained bare longer than you expected. Do not retreat simply because hope now feels risky. The hidden season accomplished something real in you, and what was built beneath the surface is strong enough to support what begins to rise. Keep your eyes open. Keep your heart willing. Take the next step when it appears. Let the ordinary faithfulness of yesterday become the courage you carry into today. You have not been standing in an empty field. You have been standing above roots, and what has been growing quietly is beginning to show itself. Now I want to speak to the deepest place of all, the place where you have learned to define yourself. Circumstances can change. Relationships can change. Opportunities can come and go, but the beliefs you carry about who you are, will quietly shape the way you enter every new season. During difficult years, labels were attached to you that I never gave you. Some came through the words of other people. Some came through disappointment. Some came from mistakes you could not stop replaying. Others formed slowly through comparison, rejection, delay, and the repeated feeling that life was moving forward for everyone except you. You began to call yourself forgotten. You wondered whether you were too damaged to be useful, too late for the dreams you once carried, too weak for the responsibilities ahead, or somehow less deserving of good things than the people around you. You may never have spoken those beliefs aloud, but they began influencing the way you thought, the opportunities you considered possible, and the expectations you allowed yourself to have. Today, I want you to separate your identity from everything that happened to you. What happened is part of your story, but it is not your name. Your failures are not your name. Rejection is not your name. Delay is not your name. Brokenness is not your name. Not enough is not your name. Too far gone is not your name. These descriptions may have felt convincing because they were attached to real experiences, but they were never the truth about who you are. I have called you something different from the beginning. You are chosen. You did not earn that name through perfect behavior, impressive faith, or flawless decisions. I knew the entire shape of your life before you lived a single day of it, including the moments you would be proud of and the moments you would wish you could change, and my knowledge of those things never caused me to withdraw my love. You are chosen with full knowledge, not chosen because I misunderstood you. You are held. There were seasons when you could not feel my hand, but your feelings were never the measure of my presence. You were held when the ground beneath you felt uncertain, when your future was unclear, when your strength seemed insufficient, and when you wondered how you would make it through another day. You are held now as well. You are purposed. Your life is not an accidental collection of unrelated experiences. The way your mind works, the compassion you carry, the things that move your heart, the questions that have shaped you, the lessons you have learned, and even the places where you still feel unfinished are not meaningless pieces scattered without design. I can work through all of them. I know there are dreams you placed quietly on a shelf because continuing to hope became painful. You did not necessarily stop wanting them. You simply stopped speaking about them. You told yourself you were becoming realistic. You lowered your expectations and called it maturity because admitting that you were afraid to hope again felt too vulnerable. I understand why you protected yourself that way. Repeated disappointment can make desire feel dangerous. When the heart has reached for something many times and returned empty-handed, it naturally begins to pull back. But I want you to notice what has been stirring again inside you. Certain desires you thought had disappeared have begun returning in quiet moments. An idea comes back to mind. A possibility you stopped considering begins to feel alive again. Something you once cared about deeply starts calling for your attention. Do not immediately silence that stirring simply because hope once hurt you. You are not the same person you were when you first carried those dreams. You have gained wisdom, depth, patience, and discernment. What once existed only as desire may now be accompanied by the maturity necessary to handle it well. Allow hope to breathe again without demanding that you know every detail of how it will unfold. At the same time, I want you to become aware of the battlefield within your thoughts. Some of the hardest battles you have fought were invisible because they happened inside your own mind. Shame learned how to replay your worst moments precisely when you felt weakest. Anxiety learned how to take uncertainty and fill it with imagined disasters. Comparison taught you to study someone else's life and use their progress as evidence that something was wrong with yours. Fear learned to speak in your own voice until its assumptions sounded like facts. You began saying things to yourself that you would never say to someone you loved. You accepted harsh conclusions about your worth because they had become familiar. But familiarity does not make a lie true. Your mind was not created to remain under constant siege. It was created for peace, clarity, wisdom, creativity, discernment, and the ability to recognize what is true. You do not have to agree with every thought that enters your mind. You do not have to treat anxiety as prophecy. You do not have to turn every mistake into an identity. You are allowed to agree with what I say about you. You are allowed to think of yourself with compassion. You are allowed to acknowledge growth without calling it pride. You are allowed to recognize strength without pretending you never struggled. Receiving a truthful view of yourself is not arrogance, it is faith. When the old labels return, do not entertain them as though they have earned another trial. Answer them with truth. I am chosen, I am held, I am purposed. Let those truths become more familiar than the accusations that once occupied your thoughts. And now I want you to release another burden you have carried quietly, the people you love. There are names you bring before me repeatedly because their choices concern you, their circumstances trouble you, or their pain makes you wish you could reach inside their lives and repair everything yourself. You have spent nights imagining what could happen to them. You have worried about paths you cannot control and decisions you cannot make on their behalf. Your love for them is real, but your love was never meant to become constant fear. I know them too. I know the details you know and the details you do not. I understand the tangled places in their lives more clearly than you ever could. Your prayers for them have not disappeared into empty space. Give them to me without interpreting surrender as indifference. Releasing someone into my care does not mean you care less. It means you finally recognize that your love has limits and mine does not. You cannot follow them into every room, protect them from every consequence, or make every decision for them. But I am not restricted by the limits that restrict you. Let me carry what your heart cannot safely carry forever. As you step forward from this message, I am not asking you to become busier, more intense, or more determined to control what happens next. I am asking you to learn how to rest. Rest is not laziness, and it is not something you earn only after every problem has been solved. Rest is an expression of trust. When you rest, you acknowledge that the world does not depend entirely upon your effort. You declare with your body what faith declares with words. There is someone greater than me at work, and I do not have to hold everything together alone. Protect this truth when old fears return. Protect the peace you are beginning to receive. Come closer to me, not merely when life becomes unbearable, but as the ordinary rhythm of your days. Let my presence become familiar ground rather than an emergency shelter you visit only in crisis. You do not need a perfect system or complicated formula. Come honestly. Come tired, come grateful, come confused, come hopeful, come exactly as you are. Before you were known by anyone else, you were known by me. Through every beautiful season, every broken season, and every long season between them, you were loved. That love has not weakened because your circumstances changed or because your emotions sometimes struggled to feel it. It is more constant than either, so walk forward without carrying the names I never gave you. Leave behind the identity built from rejection, shame, fear, and disappointment. Let your mind learn peace again. Let dormant hope rise carefully. Release the people you cannot control. Receive rest without apology. And when you step into what comes next, remember this above everything else. You are chosen, you are held, you are purposed, and you are not walking alone. I am already ahead of you on the road. I know the moments you are afraid of. I know the places you have not yet reached, and I will meet you there. When your strength feels thin, let this truth carry you forward. I am with you, I have not abandoned you, and my love will remain beneath every step you take.